Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Penovich with a quick update on our weather today and obviously the winter weather that's heading our way for the weekend. A lot to talk about. Let's dive right into what's going on right now because today has been a really weird day. We've been that classic wedged in impact, and if you don't know what a wedge is, here is a prime example. This is probably the best example of a wedge you will ever see. We are stuck with cold air trapped against the mountains. It is 55 in Rock Hill right now. In Charlotte, we just cracked 50. I think it's 49 or 50 at the airport. But go down the road to Columbia, and it's 70 degrees right now. So as we go into the evening hours, I expect the warm air is going to slowly shift to the north. So temperatures actually could be going up through the evening hours. And the reason we have the thick fog, the cold air is very shallow. It's trapped down near the surface. If you were to go 1,000 or 2,000 feet up in the air, it's actually much warmer than it is down at the ground. So that warm air is actually sinking down and compressing the cool, moist air at the surface, and that's why you're seeing the fog form. Once the atmosphere decouples or mixes up, basically taking like oil and water and mixing it up, that cold air mixes up a little bit with the warmer air aloft, things will kind of, visibilities will increase, and it should be a much better evening. You can see the main system that caused the rain is actually moving through, but the Arctic front is starting to show up really well on the national map as well. That's the Arctic front, really easy to see that thing. And that's going to set the stage for our possible winter weather heading our way. Here's this Arctic air mass, which is going to be diving into the southeast, and it's going to set up shop. Now, the system that's going to eventually bring us some moisture is actually a little piece of energy coming off of this thing, which is going to dive down here. And the latest trend in the models are actually kind of what we expected, more likely with the European model and the ensembles, which is basically all the models kind of averaged out. It's like taking 100 different variations and kind of averaging them out. They're a more suppressed system, and I'm going to talk more about what that means here. The system is here off the west coast. You can see our big spin, and here's a flat piece of energy. Instead of the system coming down and being a really sharp trough, it's coming in much flatter and further suppressed or pushed to the south, which means the amount of snow and winter precip is actually probably trending down. And if anything, this is going to push the colder air deeper into the south and possibly push the colder the winter weather further to the south. So as we go through tomorrow, you can see how flat this disturbance is coming out of the plains, not as sharp and closed off as it looked earlier in the crazy GFS runs. And this is actually much closer to what the European model has had for days. It's been much more consistent, much more accurate, even though the last deterministic run of the European model was a little bit higher snowfall total. If you look at the average of what we call the ensembles, which is basically the average of several simulations, in this case 50 some of the European and 20 something of the GFS, the models have been pretty consistent on this kind of very southern track of this system, which means this low is going to track much further south and probably stay a little flatter than it looked earlier. You can see, if you remember yesterday, I was showing the GFS, this thing was a big ball of energy right here. This thing is much more suppressed and not as sharp. It's just not a very dynamic system compared to yesterday. It doesn't mean it couldn't become a pretty potent system as it blows up off the East Coast, because I do expect coastal development of the low, but it looks like it's going to be much further offshore, which is going to pull the moisture closer to the coast. And yes, there could be winter weather pretty far deep in the south, but it also means it's probably going to get in some influence of some moisture and warmer tropical air coming off the Atlantic and the Gulf, which could keep it a cold rain. And then you see how quickly this thing moves out. By the time you wake up Sunday morning, this thing is long gone. So the main event is clearly going to be Friday night through Saturday, and probably mostly Saturday, and then moving out pretty quickly. You can see how quickly that happens. And just to illustrate the point, this is the GFS ensembles. All of these spaghetti plots, if you will, are the different tracks of the storm system. And you can see the main mean is right here, but a lot more of the lines are trending south. So what's happening is we're seeing a trend to go south and then blowing up off the coast here. And then you see it going up. So this distance offshore has grown. Yesterday, these were all really close by, which for snow in Charlotte and Atlanta and areas north, you need that track to be kind of down closer to in here and right along the coast, or maybe just a little bit in. Now that it goes farther offshore, it pulls the moisture with it and kind of gets away with it. So just to kind of give you an example of all the models, the multi-models that we can look at in this, I'm going to flip over to this one, you see the different tracks. We've got the European, UK Met, excuse me, the NCEP, GFS. We've got the Canadian model and even the NAM model now showing up here. And you notice the trend has been much further offshore. There's spaghetti plots. Just think of like hurricanes. The storm system itself is trending to the south and east, which means we're probably going to see less snow than the GFS was indicating yesterday. So the overall net impact of that is, if we look at one of my favorite products, which is the probability of seeing 1 inch of snow, you can look really carefully here. And now we're down in that 30 to 40% range. But notice actually further north it goes down. There seems to be a hot spot along I-95, which might be down into the Midlands of South Carolina. That might be the spot where we end up seeing some heavier snow. Let's look at the 3-inch probabilities and notice that the 3-inch probabilities are actually a little bit higher to the south and east here than they are to the north. And this is a definite sign that we've seen in all of the models and all of the ensembles for this shift to the south. Now remember, one single model, you can't look at a snowfall map from one single model and get carried away. Oh, now it looks like this. You're looking at trends and overall averages of the models, and these are trends that have been picked up for a while. Even if you get one crazy run that says we're going to get a ton of snow, I don't really buy much in it, and I don't really look at the snowfall maps. If you're looking at just the snowfall maps of the models, you're missing out on a lot of other information in the model that is that's really important. And this trend has been a little bit further south and east, and that's why you've seen this trend offshore. So just to give you an example, this is the GFS ensembles. These are the 21 different runs of the models, and if you look very carefully, we've got one run here that shows a lot of winter weather, another one here, and maybe this one, but all the rest are way down. So that, for instance, yesterday, if the deterministic model ends up being crazy, it's like taking this model and looking at it only and going, ooh, look at all that snow. But in fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, almost 15 of the 21 model runs shows almost nothing. And you're focusing on the one that shows a whole bunch. So let's throw out the craziest solution here, which is probably this one. And let's throw out the low end one, which is almost nothing, this one. Then let's average out the rest. And you get a pretty good idea on what's going to happen. So that being said, this is my updated winter weather chances. And I think this is a pretty good bet. And again, this is the chances of seeing 0.25 liquid snow, sleet, or ice. And right now, the one thing that I'm growing a little more confident of, this is probably going to be more of a rain or snow event than an ice event. So we've definitely seen the cold air much more entrenched. And with the further south track of the low, that actually means the cold air can get deeper south. So you're not looking at much of a mix of ice. You're looking at more rain or snow. So I really think in this area, we're looking at our best chances of seeing an inch of snow or rain mixed, and then a higher amount up here. Now this might shift further south if the trend continues, and we might see this heavy band shift down here, which means we'd be in the 10% area. But here's the amazing thing: pretty much every square inch of North and South Carolina is in the 10% chance of seeing some winter weather, which is pretty amazing this far out. I'm not going to get caught up in totals. I think tomorrow will be the day that we'll start talking about totals, and one of the ways I'm going to talk about totals is with probabilistic. What are the chances we get 1 inch versus 2 inches versus 3 inches versus nothing? And we'll break that down by percentages to give you a better example of, here's the maximum amount, here's the least amount we expect, but here's what's most likely in the middle. So updated snow meter, whoops, wrong way. There's the updated snow meter, and that's not for Monday or Tuesday. I don't know why that's showing Monday or Tuesday. So here is that updated snow meter. We've gone up to a 2. We're still in the social media buzz thing. We haven't quite got to the bread and milk phase yet, mainly because there's still some uncertainty, and it's still pretty far out. It's Tuesday, and we're talking about something that's going to happen on Saturday. And if you know anything about snow in the southeast, the chances are one thing, but when you start talking about amounts, we really don't do that until about 3 days out at the most. Maybe 4 days if you're really confident, but my confidence level isn't high enough to even put out a snowfall map yet. So I'm going to keep it right now in the social media talk of around a 1, 2. We'll see if it goes up here. It's probably not going to get up here, folks, just because I don't see that much moisture. The track and the trend and the guidance and the setup is looking less and less likely like the perfect setup for snow for us. The one thing, as I said yesterday, this is the first real good chance of winter weather, and I'm fairly confident we're going to see something. And the only question is how much of something. And so those are still the questions I have in the back of my mind. So as we get closer to the weekend, especially tomorrow into Thursday, that's when we'll really have a handle. And that'll give you about 2 whole days, 48 hours to really plan accordingly based on the amounts and the location. So hope you're having a great Tuesday. John is in for me again today. Of course, I'll keep things up to date online. If anything changes, you'll know I'll post it here first. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you coming up later tonight.